The following public affairs presentation is produced exclusively for the Cox Channel. And now, The Verdict.
Welcome to The Verdict. I'm Kent Myers with my co-host again this week, my brother Stewart. Stewart, thanks again for giving us all this time to be co-host on this show. We really do appreciate it.
You're so welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Well, I'm getting lots of good reviews and some suggestions that maybe you ought to take over in this chair and you and Mick do this when he gets back. I will fight that, however, as vigorously as I can. Speaking of fighting, we're going to have a show today talking about Homeland Security.
Yes.
And all of what's been going on in the press about the London problems with terrorism and the elevated terrorism alert. It affects all of our lives.
Well, it really does, and I think we have the guy on the show today to really talk about it.
Well, he's the head of the Oklahoma office, Kerry Pettingill, head of the Oklahoma Homeland Security office, will be on with us. And by the way, congratulations to you. This is our 280th show.
Wow. Well, it's an honor to be here. I didn't realize you were that old.
Well, now you know. And a lot of people said we wouldn't be on for the 5th show, much less the 280th, and it turns out in many cases they should have been right. But you are joining us today on The Verdict. We're pleased you have. Stewart and I will be right back with our guest in just a minute.
At Chesapeake Energy, here's a few of our favorite Hornets. Alexis likes reading. Sam enjoys history. Alec loves math. Chesapeake is proud to support both the Oklahoma City NBA Hornets and the Young Hornets at Horace Mann Elementary, where over 150 Chesapeake employees mentor to children each week. The students gain a lot from the experience, but not as much as we do. Chesapeake Energy, committed to building a better Oklahoma.
¿Eres tú?
There you go. Cox Communications está buscando empleados entusiásticos y motivados.
Disfruta de nuestros beneficios, pago competitivo, grandes ventajas y oportunidades para el adelanto.
Si desea hacer una diferencia,
Tenemos un lugar para usted aquí con Cox Communications.
Visítanos en la internet o llame para ver qué oportunidades tenemos para usted aquí en Cox.
¿Eres tú?
Cox Communications está orgulloso de ofrecer igualdad de empleos.
I'm Chris Paul.
And I'm Dave Lyles with some of our friends from the Boys and Girls Clubs in Oklahoma. Growing up is tough. Everyone needs a fun and safe place to learn and grow.
Boys and Girls Clubs offer programs that instill a sense of pride, purpose, and belonging. Club kids have grown up to become movie stars and, yes, even basketball legends.
We hope you'll join Cox, Oklahoma in supporting the Boys and Girls Club.
Get involved with your local club today because it truly is
a wonderful place for kids.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Myers with my co-host, Brother Stewart Meyers, and we're talking today about a very important, somewhat somber subject of Homeland Security. And we have with us, to my left, Kerry Pettingill, the director of the Oklahoma Office of Homeland Security, and has been in that position since 2003. He is a 22-year veteran with the Oklahoma Highway Patrol. He was a graduate of Southern Nazarene University. He has a lot to do, and we are really pleased that he would give us a few minutes of his time for us to bring you up to date on what's going on in Oklahoma with Homeland Security. Kerry, thanks for joining us.
Well, you're welcome.
We're pleased you're here.
Glad to be here.
Really pleased to have you, Kerry. And let me ask, the 22 years with the Oklahoma Highway Patrol is certainly a magnificent record. How has it helped you, help prepare you for your job at Homeland Security?
Well, part of within my career in the Highway Patrol, I was very specialized in that. Besides the working the road type things, spent 18 years doing tactical operations throughout the state, and I commanded the tactical teams in bomb squad. I was a certified bomb technician and hazardous materials technician, but those combined, along with, for 4 years I was a liaison to the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force. And it was really during those 4 years that I started developing a lot of contacts through various types of networking in the intelligence gathering field from about a 6-state region. And I just felt very confident and lucky to be able to contact those individuals whenever I wanted to and glean any kind of information I really needed. I always had a source to go to. And then in 2001, when the attacks, the 9/11 attacks happened in New York City and the Pentagon, Bob Ricks was the Commissioner of Public Safety at that time, and he really pulled me in a little bit closer than what I had normally been as a commander of a bomb squad and tactical team. And it was, I think, that background that guided him to do that. But the thing for me was that every time he asked me a question, I had an answer for him. And it was based on being so specialized. But a lot of people had warned me throughout my career, you're becoming too specialized, don't do that. You're going to limit your opportunities for promotion and things like that. But those were the things I was interested in and that I wanted to do.
I just was sitting here just before you said what you just said, thinking to myself, I don't know how one could prepare better to be a director of Homeland Security than to have a background in explosives and tactical operations and law enforcement. Those things together seem to me to represent a perfect credential for a limited purpose, but you fit that purpose, and obviously the governor who appointed you felt the same way.
Right. Governor Henry, of course, Bob Ricks was the interim director under Governor Keating, and he remained the interim director under Governor Henry. And then in September of 2003, Bob left to go to Edmond as the chief of police. And Governor Henry asked that I, stay in the position. I was the deputy director at that time, and just keep things afloat until he could make a decision on what he was going to do. And then in January 2004, he actually appointed me as the director. So it was one of those things where I didn't know for sure whether I would get the director's position, but it was certainly one of the things that it was my intent to at least be the deputy director under the new director. So, things were moving quickly in Homeland Security. It was relatively new. It is relatively new because we only became part of the state government in 2004 through the Oklahoma Homeland Security Act.
Let me interrupt us here and look at a spot, a 30-second spot that you all have furnished us on Homeland Security, and let's see what it has to say. I realize it's not Oklahoma, it's a generic nationwide spot, right. But let's take a look at that, then I'll ask you to comment on it.
Okay.
So, Mom, what if something happens? Should I stay where I am and wait for you, or go to Grandma's house since it's closer?
There's no reason not to have a plan in case of a terrorist attack.
Is there a place we all meet? If the phone doesn't work, how will I tell you I'm there?
And one extremely good reason why you should.
What should I do?
Talk to your family about what you would do in case of an emergency. For more information, go to www.ready.gov.
Everybody should have a plan. I guess you'd agree with that motto, would you not?
Everybody should have a plan, and as in that spot, all plans should begin at home. We feel that if you start planning at home, have a plan, all the small details of if you're separated, how you're going to get back together, various telephone numbers, how you're going to get prescriptions filled if you're displaced, just a wide variety of things. And at the end of that spot, you saw that there's a website, ready.gov. Within that, there are a lot of planning templates that you can use to help develop your plan at home. But Homeland Security means just that. We feel if we start with planning at home, it will lead into planning at work, which is essential for everyone, and that would move further on into continuity of business planning and things of that nature. So
I think all of us that were here in Oklahoma City at the time of the Oklahoma City bombing, and we're actually within the city itself, remembers, of course, that day and where they were at the time and what loved ones they were trying to reach. And certainly nobody had, I don't think very many people had contemplated something like that might happen. I think that points up the real need for having a little advanced planning in the event of a catastrophe.
Absolutely. It's even to the point of we've become so dependent upon cellular telephones that everyone has a phone. Even small children, 10 years old, have cellular telephones because their parents want to know where they're at and what they're doing, and they want to have contact with them. Well, it was proven during or after the Murrah bombing and even the May 3rd tornadoes of 1999, cell service was stopped. So we can't depend on that as being a means to be able to communicate with each other. We have to look at other things like rally points or I want to say a staging area, but where is it that you would go to meet up with relatives? Things like that, just a standardized site that everyone knows about, or having telephone numbers, specific telephone numbers recorded in your purse or billfold or something like that, because we have a tendency now to rely on those cellular phones or personal data assistants and things like that to have all of our phone numbers. Used to we could rattle off everyone's phone number that we knew. Well, I can't remember hardly anyone's telephone anymore because I have it in my phone or my PDA. And
I'm glad someone as young as you is admitting to that. I thought I couldn't do it, but for a different reason.
Yeah, no, it's we have a lot of knowledge that we have to absorb, and obviously we have to kick out parts of that data at times to make room for other things. So I kicked out my telephone numbers, because I have an electronic device to keep those in. But what was seen after Katrina was that people became very reliant on that, and their phones, the batteries went dead, they couldn't recharge them, various things like that, and they had no means to recover that information until much later on, or they got to a place where they could plug it in. And in a lot of shelters, everybody wants to plug in a phone. Well, did they have a jack to do it specifically for their phone? A lot of things like that. So those are things that you should keep in your Go kit or travel kit, things like that. So.
Let me jump in here and
Sure.
get us to a break, because I want to do it a little bit early, because when we come back I want to ask you about what your views are about the recent events in London, but I don't want to get you started on that
Right.
and then have to break in. So let's take our break now. We're visiting with Kerry Pettingill, the Director of Homeland Security for Oklahoma, along with my co-host Stewart Meyers. You're watching The Verdict, and we'll be right back.
Sure.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Okiwani is an Indian name for a place where children play. When we obtained the camp, we found a lot of oil debris left in the woods. We saw a commercial about how the oil and natural gas industry cleans up old oil well sites. We called the OERB, and they agreed to remove tons of concrete and steel. It didn't cost us a thing. Thousands of children have left their footprints on this land. Thanks to the oil and gas industry, they will for a long time to come.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
Here's the pitch. Line drive on it. The Cardinals won the pennant. The Cardinals lead. That's a winner. A World Series winner for the Cardinals. Oh, an unbelievable catch. Swing and a miss. Get up, baby. Get up, get up, get up, get up. Home run.
Your slice of Cardinals heaven can be found on the Cox Channel all season long.
Brad and I invite you to join us at the Governor's Mansion for September Fest. We're excited about hosting this free festival with our presenting sponsor, the Oklahoma State Medical Association. We'll have games, music, face painting, the Cuddly Centennials, fish from the Oklahoma Aquarium, and more.
Bring a picnic lunch or enjoy great food from the many vendors on Northeast 23rd Street.
The Governor's Mansion will be open for tours all day.
And the Oklahoma History Center across the street will offer free admission.
Make plans to join us at September Fest.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Myers and Stewart Meyers, co-hosts this week with Kerry Pettingill, the Director of Homeland Security in Oklahoma. Stewart, where are we?
Well, Kerry, the recent events in London and really worldwide bring us to a real threshold on the heartland and the security. Could you go into that a little bit and give us some insight?
Sure. I think the key to this is that the system is working and that there's a lot of very good shared information that's going on worldwide, that the authorities in the United Kingdom, as they were working this case, relied heavily on information that was coming to them from Pakistan, that they were sharing their information with intelligence officers and various other law enforcement groups within the United States, and everyone had a very good idea of what was transpiring over in England. And then the shared information last week that they were essentially having to pull the plug on the investigation and start making arrests because they were getting too close to carrying out their plot, which in effect affected us as Great Britain elevated their threat levels for the aviation industry on their commercial flights from the United Kingdom to the United States, which in theirs is a little bit different. They went from serious to critical, or critical to serious. It's one or the other. And in
But they went
essence,
to their highest level.
they went to their highest level,
Yeah.
which caused the United States to come into alignment with them. If they were going to do that coming into the United States, then we too should do the same thing going to the United Kingdom. So ours was raised to red, which is the first time in the history of this color-coded system that we have ever been at a red, and quite frankly, most of us believed that we would never be at red. I mean, it was going to have to be something extremely serious before we went to a red, and those authorities in Washington, D.C. believed that this was critical enough to do that. And then the domestic commercial aviation industry throughout the rest of the United States went to orange. We've been to orange at various times in the past, but we've gotten better, or they've gotten better, to make it more business sector oriented. As opposed, very early on when we first did this, the whole nation would go to orange, and it was, so what does that mean? What are we going to do differently for everyone? And now it's very much oriented towards a certain sector of business. And so we're at orange. We're going to remain at orange probably for some time. I say sometime, another week or two at maybe, depending on what else transpires out of Great Britain. We know that they believe that the principal players in this plot are under arrest, but they believe that there may be some other operatives that are still outstanding, and they want to gather those folks up as well. So the investigation is continuing, but most people feel very comfortable about having their hands around the folks that were the primary people within this case.
Let me ask a fundamental layman's question about this sort of thing. Let's say that as actually happened, our threat level went from yellow to orange in Oklahoma.
Right.
Did that cause your office to send out notifications, or your office to do things that it had not done recently?
Right. The actions that we take, and because it's commercial aviation, didn't require us to have to do very much, actually. Because that's really driven under regulation and authority of the federal government, Transportation Security Administration, Federal Aviation Administration. They have them all covered. So essentially the way it transpired for me was Wednesday night, about 10:30, I got a phone call that something was up, people putting out feelers. At 11:30, I got a call from the United States Department of Homeland Security's Operations Center notifying me of a teleconference, national teleconference at midnight, our time. And that was whenever we were told about the raising of the threat levels. And of course, my first reaction is to notify the governor, to let the governor know that this is transpiring and we're going to have to make a decision in the morning. It wasn't something that we needed to do right now, because all of those affected were the commercial domestic aviation assets in the state of Oklahoma, which were essentially Tulsa International and Will Rogers World Airport. And that at 4 a.m. Eastern time, the level was going to be raised, and certain actions were going to be put in place, and that was going to be done by TSA. So there really wasn't much we had to do except align ourselves with what the federal government was doing, because there really wasn't much we could do as a state other than lend support. We inquired with TSA if they needed any additional resources, state law enforcement, National Guards personnel that might stand in and like the secondary checks prior to boarding, things of that nature. And after midday, the report back was, we think we have it handled pretty well. So we didn't have to do anything other. It's just mostly position ourselves to help if we needed to, but obviously we didn't have to do that.
Oklahoma has been brought very close to the national scene, and with the Oklahoma City bombing, and of course our participation as helpers in the 9/11 affair. What do you think the lessons that Oklahomans have learned from those two events?
Well, hopefully the lessons that we've learned is that we always have to be vigilant and prepared, that it can happen anywhere. It doesn't have to be a New York City, a Chicago, or a Los Angeles, or a Dallas, that a mid-sized place like Oklahoma City could be a target as well. And I take it even further, because on April 18th, 1995, if someone would have said that there's a plot to blow up a federal building somewhere in the United States, I doubt very seriously if anyone would have looked at Oklahoma City as a potential place. So as we look at threats that are communicated, and they're very broad. They're not site specific, but it might be the railroad industry, or let's say that it might be some governmental facility, and governmental is very broad. It could be local government on up. So why would we think that an Elk City or an Altus or a place like that wouldn't be a target, when we probably wouldn't have thought of Oklahoma City as a target? So we have to open our eyes, we have to think very broadly, and we have to have concern for all of our citizens. And we can't just assume it's not going to take place in our home. We have to assume today that any place is a potential target.
Kerry, excuse me for butting in, and we're out of time. I want to thank you very much for two things. One, for appearing on our show today, and second, for the job you're doing for the citizens of Oklahoma. We're all very grateful for it, and we want to invite you back whenever some new information comes along that you'd like to get out. We'd be happy to convey it through our audience. We've been visiting with Kerry Pettingill, the Director of Homeland Security for the state of Oklahoma, with my brother Stewart Meyers as co-host. You've been watching The Verdict with Kerry. Stick around. We're going to take a break, but we'll be right back.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Just keep it.
Thank you. Dr. Kessler? What's up with the pizzas?
Well, I just got my first satellite bill, and those extra fees were a bit of a shocker.
So I had to take a second job.
Hey, this was supposed to be pepperoni, dillweed.
Hey, it's Dr. Dillweed to you.
Whatever.
Kids. It's cool. I'm a people person.
Don't live in satellite denial. Get all your entertainment without the hidden charges from Cox, your friend in the digital age.
So, Mom, what if something happens? Should I stay where I am and wait for you, or go to Grandma's house since it's closer?
There's no reason not to have a plan in case of a terrorist attack.
Is there a place we all meet? If the phone doesn't work, how will I tell you I'm there?
And one extremely good reason why you should.
What should I do?
Talk to your family about what you would do in case of an emergency. For more information, go to www.ready.gov.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Myers with my co-host Stewart Meyers. We are pleased that Kerry Pettingill joined us. Talk about Homeland Security. It's something that we obviously need to know a lot about and be current about. What are we doing next week?
Well, next week we're going to be pleased to have the head of the police department in Oklahoma City, Bill Chitty, and we're really looking forward to what he has to say to us.
Well, it'll be interesting. Let's look at a couple of websites, by the way. Let's look at our website first, theverdict.tv. Well, I'll tell you what, let's look at Homeland Security first, www.homelandsecurity.ok.gov. And that, if you want to get a hold of Mr. Pettingill and talk about Homeland Security matters, that's how you can do that. If you want to get a hold of us and talk about verdict matters, you can check us out on theverdict.tv. For my brother Stewart, as co-host, thanks for joining us this week, and we'll see you next week.
The preceding program was produced by the Production Services Group at Cox Communications, exclusively for the Cox Channel.